Hello guys, me again, back with another video. This time we're going to talk about feet. Specifically we're going to talk about plantar fascia. So I guess for starters we've got to explain what is plantar fascia. So fascia is connective tissue essentially. You can think of it, it's quite similar in characteristics to tendon, ligament, things of that nature. So the fascia, or the plantar fascia specifically, connects all the way across this heel bone here, particularly this bottom aspect. So not all the way, you're not to the point where you're necessarily standing on it, but right in this sort of line, just at the bottom sort of inner portion of this heel bone here, the medial aspect. And that is typically where clients feel the most pain. So what happens is, generally it's an acute response to overload. So what that means is you've kind of gone too hard too soon. The type of things that would or could trigger plantar fasciitis could be a change of shoes. So if you've gone from a different pair of, and even if it's a more supportive type of shoe, it's just the difference. You know, if you've gone from something really loose and sloppy to something really tight and potentially supportive, just that change in biomechanics can definitely stir some things up. So you can get irritation from that, but then it can be things completely out of your control, like humidity, temperature. It can be things that you bring on yourself, like training load, volume, duration, intensity, anything like that. So a lot of different things can cause it. It's really, really debilitating. It basically feels like someone's got a hammer and they've just gone and whacked you right on the heel here. People will often sort of say when they get out of bed in the morning, it's the first few steps out of bed that feels like they're walking on glass. That's something almost word for word that we do here pretty much almost all the time when you're dealing with plantar fascia. The reason why they feel that way is because when we sleep, if we're laying on our back, generally, I mean, I can't really show you on this foot model great without breaking it, but basically those toes all fold forward or flex down like that, and because the fascia ends up all the way in the toes and goes all the way down through here, when we shorten through there, it contracts this tissue. Then when we go and stand on it, you're doing this sort of thing, and it's already irritated and it's already shortened, and then you're essentially using your body weight to stamp it down, and it was already pulling on this area through here. So when you're stamping on it, basically when you're walking out of bed, this part was already upset and irritated. Now it's going to be really irritated and really tender and sore. Admittedly, that we will get better at a certain point. Like once you get over that original soreness for the morning, like those first few steps, it might not hurt as much. Generally they get to about the middle point of the day, and that's kind of the sweet spot because it's stretched itself out, but it hasn't really sort of started irritating the heck out of that yet. That generally comes toward the end of the day. So both the start and the end of the day are often the worst for people with plantar fasciitis. The start's the worst because you're tugging on that tissue that's already irritated. The end is the worst because you've been tugging on that tissue that's already irritated now for the entire day without giving any relief. So what I'm going to tell you about today is how to give this foot, or specifically this plantar fascia, a bit of relief. Fortunately, it's quite easy. There's a lot of different things we can do, so that's what I'm about to go through now. Okay, ignore the multiple fire trucks that are going, oh my god, 3 fire trucks that are going past the clinic at the moment. Ignore that. It's a Sunday. I thought I'd try and get in here and use that when the roads would be quiet. Clearly that's not the case. Anyway, moving on. A nice pink ball. I'll put my foot out of the way here. Pink ball, pink socks. Must be a pink day today, I suppose. So both shoes can come off. What we're going to do here, I'm going to pop this on the ground, and all I'm going to do is roll it along, particularly along the arch of my foot. So you can use a tennis ball for this. Sometimes a tennis ball is a little bit too soft, depending on how much pain you're in. A tennis ball may be appropriate. Ultimately, I would like to see you kind of progress to something a little bit firm, a little bit more aggressive, just because you're doing something, but you could be achieving a lot more with something a little bit more aggressive, as long as you can tolerate it. You know, it's always got to be within a tolerable pain level. So it's really not rocket science what I'm doing here. All I am doing is rolling my foot on the ball here. It actually feels quite nice to me. I do this most days because I think looking after your feet is really important, particularly for people that are on their feet a lot, people that wear, you know, heeled shoes, or just that are wearing inappropriate footwear, which unfortunately is, I would almost say, most people out there really. So this can feel really nice at the end of the day. All you're doing is rolling the sole of your foot along there. Something else that you can do that's quite similar but also quite different to that is, instead of just using a spiky ball like this, get a bottle of water, frozen water, Palm Mount Franklin, whatever water bottle you have, get it, freeze it solid, same thing, pop it on the ground and just roll your foot back and forth over top of it. The reason why we do suggest that additional to maybe just the spiky ball is that we've got to understand what we're dealing with. It's plantar fasciitis. So the itis aspect of the word refers to inflammation. So if you've got inflammation of tissue, it makes sense that, rest, ice, compress, elevate, particularly the icing aspect, can sort of give you a bit of symptomatic relief. So not only are you getting the mechanical release of actually rolling your foot on something, but you're also going to get the benefits of that ice as well. The third and final thing that we can do is address the tissue through the back of the calf here. So there's really only two main things that we want to deal with through here. One is the gastroc, so kind of the upper calf. One is through here, through the soleus, so essentially the lower calf if you wanted to divide it like that. It is important to stretch both of them. The way that we stretch them is a little bit different from one another. So when we want to stretch the upper calf through here, you don't have to use a ball, but just use this, a curb or a step or any elevated platform you can pop your toes on. And all you need to do is pop your toes on and drop your heel down. And you should be able to feel that pulling through the back of the calf there. The other thing additional to stretching the upper calf is this lower calf. We do have to stretch that one a little bit differently. So assuming my shoe here is the wall, you put that down, start with your toes quite close to it. And what you want to do is push this knee forward. And you want to push it forward, but keep that heel on the ground. So you want to keep moving the foot back further till your knee can touch that wall with the heel on the ground. So this will probably be too much for me. Yeah, so that's right on the limit. See how my heel's trying to come off the ground a little bit there? It's doing that because my ankle doesn't have the range of motion to do that. So that would be an adequate stretch, both my upper and my lower calf muscles. It is important to do both because they do turn into this Achilles tendon here. It wraps around, goes under the heel, and the same fibers that started up here are definitely going to have an effect on what's going on through the sole of the foot there. So there's 3 different things that you can potentially try yourself. See how they go. If they work, awesome. I fully believe that they will. If they don't, send me a message and we'll take it from there. I'll see what we can advise beyond that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.